when I say read it all the time, I don't mean read it all the time, like just keep reading it. I mean, you're always going to see things differently. It's one of those books
Mm-hmm.
that just continues to reveal itself to you, especially because it applies to situations.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Almost every situation that you can possibly imagine. But so like I refer to it frequently. I mean, I quote it. You know what I'm saying? But I refer
Yeah.
to it frequently because of it's just a font of wisdom that you can just continue to go back to and get something else from the same passages.
All
But
right. Let's see.
yeah,
Let's see what you remember. If if your enemy is going through a body of water, when should you attack them?
when they're halfway in.
That's not what I remember. I remember them saying wait for them. You should wait for them to get out of the water to attack them.
Yeah, when half of them are in and half of them are out.
Oh, I didn't read that part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, you when they so you wait for them to cross, and when half of them come out and half of them are in, you
Hmm.
attack.
Okay. Okay. Now it
But
didn't say
that's
why. It didn't say why. So I guess that part had to be left to your imagination unless they go back to
well.
that.
So the thing is, do you read the commentaries on the Art of War in the back of the book?
I haven't I haven't gone to the back of the book yet. No.
Okay, so the Art of War, if you have a good copy, is two books.
Oh
It's the Art of
yeah.
War, and it's the Art of War with commentaries. So it
Mm.
should be the Art of War twice, right? It'll be the Art of
Okay.
War, and then the second book will it takes each passage, and certain brilliant military strategists added their commentaries or their thoughts on what the
Ah,
master teacher was saying.
I didn't know
And
this other version.
some of them differ. Yeah, you want to definitely get it with commentary. Like whenever you get an opportunity, read it with commentary. So
Hmm.
what it is it'll literally, the one I have is the Art of War and the Art of War with commentary. So in the back of the book, it's just the Art of War reprinted again, but in not every passage, just certain passages like the great General Cao Cao
Hmm.
or even Napoleon or just brilliant military strategists have given their thoughts. Some just it might just be one general who gave a thought. In some passages, like three different people from three different time periods in history
Hmm.
gave their thoughts on what the passage meant. So what that passage means, and the reason why is, so you're going to get to a position, a chapter in the book called the types of grounds, the 9 types of grounds.
Okay.
There are 9 types of grounds by which all combat takes place on. These are physical grounds, and they're also metaphorical, but they're all
Hmm.
physical ground. There's like
Hmm.
intractable ground, which is kind of ground where you can't freely pass through without encountering obstacle. There's
Hmm.
open ground, which means, if you go to, if say you're leading troops and you go to lead troops and you lead them across a football field, you're on
Hmm.
open ground.
Yeah.
On all sides, you're exposed. You
Right.
understand what I'm saying? Then there's death ground. Death ground is on death ground, we demonstrate the desperateness of the situation. Death ground is the ground that we're on where we can either move forward or retreat.
Mm.
And the only option on death ground is to fight.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? It literally says on death ground, we demonstrate the desperateness of the situation. On death ground, fight. Because there's nothing you can do but
I'm
fight.
surprised no one
So
ever made like a video game, like a video game based on like the Art of War.
well, there's things like Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I mean, it's not based on Art of War, but it's certainly Chinese war strategy, and the Art of War is one of the tomes in the game.
Uh, Including like
You
the
know,
different types of ground you can fight on and stuff.
yeah, absolutely, because you got to realize, not to sound shady, but like China wrote the book on war.
Hmm.
They really did, in the sense that this is one of the oldest countries on the continent, and they've been they've been carrying out military operations, probably like full scale military operations, probably longer than any other country on earth.
Right.
We're not talking like battles here, and we're talking full scale million man marches, and you know what I mean, things like you know longer than probably any other country on earth. So they have, like, the Art of War is just one of many military treatises found and
Mm.
written in China. It's one of many.
Right.
You know, there's Master Kong Ming's treatise on war. There's the Mo Z. There's the 7 commentaries. There's Sun Bin's Art of War, the Sun Bin Fa. There's the 3 stratagems. There's like these are all treatises on war, ancient treatises on war. The thing is, the Art of War is just the most concise because it takes what people believe the best examples from the examples that already existed and compiles them into a brilliant treatise. I mean, there are people who have found flaw in it, other strategists, but
Sure.
for the most part, it holds up. But so that situation that you were describing, right, where when's the best time to attack an enemy's troops, it speaks to, like, you know, present day, right? You don't want to confront an enemy standing ready at full strength. You want to confront him when he's harried, right?
Right.
Like, I want to engage you in debate when your mind is diverted on something else. Or
It also reminds me of the thing presidents like to say, especially incumbent presidents, is you don't change horses midstream when they're trying
yep,
to get you to like vote for them instead of like a new person.
yep, yep.
I also bought Machiavelli, and then I bought one more,
Machiavelli's dope.
and
The
then
the tactics the tactics is, so there's a difference between strategy and tactics,
mhm,
which a lot of people confuse the two, right? Your strategy is the overarching plan. Your tactics are how you're going to carry out your strategy. See what I'm
yes.
saying?
Oh yeah, no,
So
we definitely talked about that at work because yeah, that was definitely a theme. The difference, I think, last year, or the year before, the difference between strategy and tactics.
right.
We were talking about
So
how a lot
the
of people become good at tactics and lack strategy.
right. So this is a tactic, attacking an army. It's not a strategy, right? A tactic would be to attack the army while it's half in stream, because you are going to force half the army to either drown or retreat.
Hmm.
They can't press forward and they can't stay in the water.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
they're either going to drown or they're going to have to retreat, which you either kill half the army or you divide the army.
right.
That's the strategy behind that tactic.
And then
You
the
see what I'm
third,
saying?
yeah, and then the third book that I bought is An African American and Latinx History of the United States by
Oh,
Paul
that's dope. I
Ortiz.
haven't heard of that. I'd be interested in that.
Yeah,
That's
and
really
then
dope.
when I was when I was looking up the reviews, I saw someone complaining about the word Latinx, and that was interesting.
I like how Art of War starts. War is a
Hmm.
grave affair state, a matter to be contemplated carefully.
Hmm.
It says so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's,
Do
you
they
know,
use that in the movie Ghost Dog? Is that like do they use any quotes from The Art of War?
I can't recall, but
Okay.
Ghost Dog. When I saw Ghost Dog, that might have been, I saw Ghost Dog years ago. So I
Yeah.
mean years ago. So
Yeah.
it would have been before I became a student of the Art of War.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I remember trying to read the Art of War when I was very young, and it just didn't do anything for me.
Sure.
And then one day it just started to click. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
I think of the tenets of the Art of War because I look at politics, right? And I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? You know, there's certain things that are so subtle, like, you know, an army arrayed with flags and gongs and you know, this speaks to that political thing where we were talking about co-opting, right? So
Hmm.
it speaks to when you get a whole bunch of people together and they beat drums and they wave flags to proliferate a message. While in the military, it speaks to something else, right? It speaks to readiness. It speaks to strength, even if you're not strong, right? You
Right.
still you beat the drums, you raise the flags, you stand array, you stand, you know, disciplined, and you know, you'll read and you'll see things, like you'll question things like, you know, the Art of War says that a general should lead his troops up a mountain to battle and kick the ladder away. so they can't retreat.
So your own troops can't retreat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So morale is important, right? And there's different ways to encourage morale. But the
Mhm.
reason why you kick that ladder away is so in a desperate situation, a wise general is going to put his troops backs to a stream or to a cliff, because you can make a man, one man whose back is to a cliff will fight like two
Right.
men.
Right. I get it.
You understand what I'm saying?
I get it.
Like he'll fight like he's two men because the situation is desperate.
Hmm.
And,
Right.
it's all about, you know, and Art of War can be really shady. If you ever read mine, you'll see all my notes in it, because I like terrorism to me is clearly defined in the Art of War.
Well,
It just is.
what's interesting is when I posted the 3 books online, and then I had a Tupac song in the background because he was obviously infatuated with Machiavelli, but also the art of war. I
Mhm.
wonder how much of his actions were informed by the art of war, because he spoke about it a lot.
I mean, it becomes a subconscious mechanism once you really begin to read it and understand it. Some things become subconscious, and you find yourself. The one thing that I had to do is kind of reel myself in, because when you really become a student of the Art of War, you look at every situation that you engage in as a battle.
Hmm.
And it's hard not to, because it's such a short book. Like, you can read it in a night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? and it's, when you read and you begin to read and you begin to read it, you realize that it applies to just regular casual conversations, and you find yourself leveraging for position. And it's like, I gotta fall back. I can't be talking and interacting with just regular people. Like, if I'm going into a business meeting or an interview or what have you, I'm Art of
Right.
War. But if I'm just
Sure.
talking to my people, you know what I
Right.
mean? And it was like, these were like subconscious mechanisms where I'm like, I can't, you know what I mean? I find myself in this situation, positioning myself here, or you know what I'm saying,
Right.
or positioning myself mentally here, so that I can prepare to defend, or you know what I mean? Because so they say that defense implies strength, attack implies weakness. This is the opposite of what an average person would tell you, right? But this is what the Art of War says. Defense implies strength, attack implies lack. And this is literally what the Art of War, and there's a reason why. And it's about you. I don't want to break it, I don't want to ruin it for you, but as you read it, you'll learn about forms and dispositions.
Hmm.
And once you learn about forms and dispositions, you'll see how the Art of War really applies outside of just war. Like, because you can give the enemy or your opponent a disposition. You can then, by doing that, you can influence the disposition that they take. And then by doing that, you can determine their form. And their form may be defense, it may be attack, it may be strength, it may be weakness. And if they're not up on the Art of War, they don't know how to hide these things. The Art of War says, if you're weak, appear strong.
Right.
If you're strong, appear weak.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
this
I
is,
remember that part. I remember that part.
and
Yep.
I'll give you an example of changing dispositions that I used in my life. So there was a time period when I was working at the hospital. Um, I was a floating clerk, and my boss asked me if I wanted to be the permanent clerk of a critical zone, surgery zone. And the nurse who was in charge of that zone was very mean. She was real. I don't want to say her name online, but she was very mean person. I remember the one time I floated into her zone, and she tried to have me fired. Mind you, I couldn't get fired because I'd only been on the job for 2 weeks, so I was still in training. And the
Okay.
clerk who was supposed to be training me called in sick, but my boss saw that I was picking up the job really quick, so she just kind of left me there, even though I was supposed to be in training. So I kind of messed things up because it's a highly critical zone, and I was still in training. So she was like, yeah, he's not going to work out. And my boss just kind of disregarded it because she knew what she kind of threw me into. But this was a woman who didn't realize how shady her disposition was. I remember a very senior clerk floated into her zone. And I remember this woman said to her, the main clerk of that zone was Diane. And I remember this woman called herself complimenting her because Diane wasn't at work. She was covering for Diane, and the nurse who ran the zone came up to this woman who was covering for Diane and said, "You're good, but you're no Diane." And she genuinely thought she was complimenting her. So she used to make her nurses cry every day. They were afraid of her. So my boss was like, "Listen, you can be the permanent clerk on this zone. It'll be your home. You can run it. I know that you can run it and get this zone in order," which I did. I ended up becoming employee of the year for that zone. But anyway, I was like, I remember saying to my boss, "You're trying to have me fired because the nurse who runs that zone hates me, the unit manager." So I remember when I got there, I had been a student at Art of War for some years at this point in time. So when I took over the zone, the first thing I did was walk down to her office and knocked on the door. I walk into her office. Now, mind you, this is a mean woman. She's always mean. I walk into her office. She's like, "Come in." I go into her office and I just stand there and I don't say anything. And she's like sitting there at her desk looking at me and I don't say anything to her. And she finally goes, "Well, can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, actually." And she's like, "What's up?" And I said, "So I don't see a candy dish on your desk." And like her face just changed. And I'm like, "No, seriously. Like, I don't know how this relationship's going to work if you don't have a candy dish on your desk." And she just kind of like looked at me and she was like, "Is that it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay." And so then I walked back down the hall to my desk. And the next day, knocked on her door. And she's like, she invites me in and I'm like, "Still no candy dish." And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "That was it? That's all you came down here for?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "This is going to become a thing." And so she starts laughing. That's when I had her. And what my goal was not to change her disposition as a person, because I recognize who you are. You're not mean because you're just mean. You're one of the realest people. Like, you're the easiest. And I used to tell the nurses, like, Judy is the easiest. She's a pussycat. She's the easiest person to deal with because you know what you're going to get. She's never going to be fake. You know what you're going to get. You just have to figure out how to deal with her disposition or change her disposition towards you. So what my goal was, and this was proactive, Mike, my goal was I wanted Judy to associate me with laughter. That's what I just want you to associate me with laughter. You don't need to get to know me. We don't need to have a conversation so I can figure out how we're going to work together. None of that. I'm not even going to talk to you except to tell you that I expect to see candy on your desk. So one day my nurses came running up to my desk. My friend Danny, she was like, "Ish, you'll never believe it." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Go to Judy's office." I go to Judy's office, candy dish on her desk filled with candy. She turns around with a big smile on her face and she's like, "I got candy, Ish." And then she's like, "And you know what else?" And she like opened up her cupboard and there were bags of candy. And I'm like, "See, I knew this was going to be a good relationship." And so what I did was every morning when she came down the hall, she might be miserable in the morning. First thing in the morning, as soon as she saw me, she smiled because I made it subconscious. Your subconscious recognition of me is something that makes you smile. You understand what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then our relationship from that point on, it was great. Nurses would come to me, "Ish, I got to talk to Judy. Can you talk to her?" And Judy would talk to me and change. Her whole demeanor would change. Because I changed your disposition towards me. Not trying to
Right.
change who you are. You understand what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah.
just going to change your disposition towards me, and I know how to do it. I didn't know that it would work, but that was my strategy, and my tactic was to make her think of me with laughter. It's a perfect example where I totally use the art of war knowingly in a personal situation, or I wasn't gonna be able to work there. You wanted to have me fired. That was my first experience with you. I have to change that altogether. can't be coming to work every day thinking you got a clerk that can't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like none of that. I need to change this disposition. And I did. And she'd come down the hall first thing in the morning, she'd see me and she'd smile. Because it's a subconscious reaction that I gave you. I remember I told my wife, I use the art of war with my wife
Hmm.
perfectly. Because, my wife always comes to me about leadership stuff because she's in leadership at her job.
Yeah.
And she's very antisocial. So she'll always come to me about leadership stuff. And there was a situation she had with her boss, who is now no longer her boss, but a very good friend of hers. But at the time, she was her boss. And they were being called into a meeting with her boss's boss. And my wife is always on her P's and Q's about everything that she does. She's brilliant at her job. And she said to me, she said, Ish, I'm nervous. And I'm like, why? And she goes, because my boss is calling me into a meeting with her boss about some information that was wrong. And I'm like, well, do you know the information? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, you know everything that you need to know. And she's like, yeah. She said, but I have a feeling that my boss is going to throw me under the bus in front of her boss because she doesn't have the information. And I'm like, oh, that's easy. And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, that's super easy. And I said, when you go into the meeting, I said, what you're going to do is you're going to recruit Tina. And this is how you're going to do it. You're going to go in the meeting, you're going to disseminate the information to your boss's boss, and you're going to do it in such a way as if you and Tina both are privy to this information. Tina's not going to have to talk and say what she does or doesn't know. You're going to say it, and you're not going to outshine her. You're not going to create an enemy. You're going to recruit an ally. You're going to incorporate Tina and transmit this information as if y'all both are privy to it. Simple as that. And that's what she did. And Tina came out of that meeting and told my wife, you clearly know more about accounting than I do. And they have been allies and great friends for 6 years now.
That's dope.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And these are subtle, like put your ego down. Don't feel that you're going to be thrown under the bus. Instead of recognize like you're about to go to war, but when you do go to war, right, recruit an ally rather than make an enemy. She was
Right.
going to possibly throw you under the bus, but show her, it kills a whole bunch of birds. Show her how indispensable you are. Show her how much of an ally you can be. You understand what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
these are all the things that you can just check off. And y'all both come out shining. Because in ancient Chinese history, right, Mike, if you're the general or you're the commander and I'm smarter than you because you're smart enough as a leader to put smarter people around you to advise you,
Hmm.
and I'm advising you and I give you information, I'm always going to give you the information as if you already knew. You were just too busy thinking about other things to really, you understand what I'm saying? I'm never going to give you the information as if you didn't know it. Even if you didn't know it, I'm always going to present it to you like, Mike, if you weren't so busy with this, you probably would have come up with this. You know what I mean? Like I would have never, you know what I mean? I'm never going to present it like you didn't know and I'm enlightening you.
Right.
Even though I am. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
This is art of war. I'm always going to present it as if you knew it. You're the leader. You got all these other things. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
That's why you have me here. But this isn't something you couldn't have come up with. There's many victories that you can win. And all these things apply in the workplace. There are little battles that you can win. People get so prideful and so egotistical that they want to combat or outshine coworkers or those who are above them. And it's like, well, there's a better way. There's just a better way. Then, you know what I'm saying? Like there's certainly a better way to outshine or win these battles without proactively doing it. Passively. You understand what I'm saying? Like in Art of War just kind of starts to, as you read it more and more, because the first couple times you read it, you're not going to see that stuff. but then you start being in life situations and you're reading it, and then it's like something else within those pages starts to reveal itself to you. You understand what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I don't necessarily. Why do you think sometimes on Facebook, no matter how belligerent people get with me, I just don't argue back with the same level of belligerence?
Right.
I keep a certain, I say stupid things, but I keep a certain type of track record. I've never called the president 45. I've never said not my president. There's reasons for this. Even if I agree, there's reasons why I don't say them.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I, not one, for argument's sake. Two, I never know how that could impact my life. What if I create a clothing company called F Designer and become somebody public? You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
And then there's this long history of me saying things that could impact the could have a negative impact.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying? So while I may criticize, I don't criticize from a perspective of insult. I'm not gonna go out on Facebook and be like, Donald Trump is dumb. You've never seen me do it. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I've
Yeah.
never went on Facebook and said it. I won't do that about Biden. I'll be critical, but I'll never insult. I'll never say not my president. I've never used the term 45.
Well,
You understand what I'm saying?
for some people, 45 is a neutral term. Just a number.
I mean, I get it, but in most cases, and that's where we talk about co-opting. And what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Was it a neutral term first and it got co-opted into a negative term, or was it a negative term that some people co-opted just to be neutral? Either way,
I never heard
overwhelmingly,
it as I certainly never heard it as a negative term. I mean,
I've only ever heard it as a negative term. It's a way of saying not my president. I'm not going to call him the president.
yeah, I never saw it that way.
I know you didn't. You're in a minority though.
Hmm.
That's what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, and that's why I said chicken before egg, like which came first, because originally it was just people's refusal to acknowledge him as the president, which to me I always thought was idiotic. I'm not criticizing anyone. I think it's oxymoronic, because you don't have to acknowledge him as your president or not. He's your president. If there's this poetic sense of, well, I don't accept him as my president, that's fine. That's fair. But on paper, if you call yourself an American citizen and you pay taxes, then he's your president, no matter how much you say he's not.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which is why I never found myself, like, there are better arguments that I can have, and I'm Art of War too. Like, there are just better arguments that I can have than he's not my president. To me, that was like a whole bunch of people taking their ball and just not playing in the sandbox anymore. Like, he's not my president. He is. He is. If every time we have a Republican president, are we going to be like, are liberals going to be like, not my president?
That's the thing that you don't understand. That's the thing you never got about him. It wasn't about him being a Republican, because we've had plenty of Republicans.
Well, but the reason why I said that, though, is because he's the first to get not my president. So my curiosity is that going to be, is it about being a Republican? Remains to be seen until we get another Republican.
Well, I'm telling you from my standpoint, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing that's frustrating is you have people that treat him like he's just another Republican candidate. And, for those who support him, there's people support him for different reasons, but to not understand that he is like on a different level outside of anything that we're used to as far as how presidents act, it just seems like a little, I don't know, it just seems a little strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
It seems a little bit strange. It's like, we could admit that there's something different between, I don't know. I mean, the presidents have been getting strange over the years, but there's certainly something far different from how George Bush Sr. acted and how Donald Trump acts. Just as far as even just being presidential, even if you take politics out of it, just the way he interacts with the public, like all the things that you're saying, how you don't let people goat you and you don't let people bait you.
Hmm.
This person does all of that. Like there's a reason that people, kind of put the extra distance there, and it's different than just being a Republican.
Okay. I mean, no, it's a good point.
I mean, we'll see what the we'll see what the future holds for the Republican Party. I mean, I can't guarantee you that people won't feel like that again, but it's not just because it's a Republican and we didn't win.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, we'll see.
And
I
speaking of
do
which,
know.
I was just going to say, speaking of which, I heard he's been asking questions again about like being able to pardon his family members. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't. He should be able to, but I didn't. I have no problem if he does, but I didn't hear anything about it. Certainly something I don't have a problem with, though. If he chooses to if he wants to be able to pardon his family members, so well, I don't care. I just want him to be gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, all that. I don't, and I know we're not going to be rid of him, and we shouldn't be strategically. Like, he shouldn't go anywhere, like, at all, at all. If I'm his advisors, I'm like, don't go away. You've polarized half the country, and you have. I don't go away. That's what I would be saying.
Well,
So,
yeah, it really depends on what he wants, though. I mean, as a businessman, I don't know if he really wants to be bothered with running a country again for 4 to 8 years.
say again.
As a businessman, I don't know if he wants to be bothered with running a country again for 4 to 8 years.
Well, you'd only be able to have 4 more years.
Oh, yes, yes, sorry. Yeah, yeah, 4 more years, yeah. Well, hey, you never know. You never know.
No, that's true. That is true. But yeah, he most he could do is 4 more years.
That's what your guy Bloomberg stayed in there for some extra time.
Not as
But
president.
no, no, not as president, but as the mayor of the biggest city in the country.
Yeah, he did. He did.
And he really did it in one of the shadiest ways, like really threatening and putting pressure on all the other city council members. People who were like against it finally came out in support of him because I know he was like, "You're gonna get no funding for your part of the city. Like you don't want to come against me."
Oh, he was laying down the threats hard, huh?
Oh yeah, Christine Quinn. She was a city council person that was running for mayor and was definitely against, the third term, which New York City residents have voted against several times, um, being able to run for a third term They voted for term
So
limits several times. Several times.
so is that a new precedent now?
Um, no, he said he was for it going back to 2 terms after he got elected for the third term. How shady is that?
Yeah, but now based upon that though, is that a new precedent? Can anyone else do it now?
No, I think the law is still 2 terms.
Oh wow, he just got away with it.
Yeah,
Huh.
his excuse was the economy's
And
really bad.
you were living in the city during this,
Oh yeah,
and how'd you feel about it?
I I was livid. Definitely voted against him and said some nasty things about him in public that I do not retract.
Well, yeah, no point in crying over spilled milk. It's already spilled. Can't go back and clean it up. But huh. Was he bad? I mean, I liked some of the things when he talked. There was a point in time that I liked some of the things he said.
Exactly. You hit it right on the nose. He had some good points. He had some bad points. You hit it on the nose. I mean, listen, we had Giuliani before him, so of course he looked good there. Um, he was smart, right? Which unfortunately nowadays you got to include that in your description of politicians. I'm not going to mention any names, but
Hmm.
you have to include that. Um,
Hmm.
he had some good environmental things that he put in there, or that he was for, but he was horrible for black people. He was the king of stop and frisk. The whole broken windows thing and the stop and frisk thing, he advanced that like that was his baby. He messed us up with that one. So much so that it was one of the reasons that he lost when he was running for president. Like, I mean, they got him out of there quick though. I thought he was gonna be in there, gonna be doing his thing in the debates. I thought he would be smart, and they crushed him with all the stop and frisk stuff and some of the negative things he said about like black people, and they crushed him. And he didn't even have, even being a billionaire, he didn't have his talking points where he could go against that stuff. I was shocked. I was surprised. Like he was basically like, how you see them writing in their notepad while the other person's talking in a debate, so like point counterpoint what you want to say and things like that.
Hmm.
I feel like he never he never came back up to speaking after that. He just wrote the shit down they said about him, and he went his merry way.
Oh wow. Now what's his past? Like where's he from? What's his background?
I don't really know. He seems like a New York guy. I know he's a big Wall Street. I know he's made a ton of money on Wall Street, and um, people were looking at him a little suspiciously that he made a lot of money while he was mayor, which is uh, somewhat typical of politicians. They often make a lot more money, uh, while they're leading, but that's not. But that's shady, though. That's not. That's not the way it should be. Yeah.
Hmm. Bloomberg. So, I mean, but like, where does he come from? Like, he's a businessman? Does he like?
Oh
Where
yeah,
would
yeah,
I?
yeah, yeah. He's a businessman.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I meant when I was like, what's his background?
Yeah. Yep.
That's definitely
Businessman.
ah ah, and he's conservative, correct? But he ran on a liberal platform.
No, no, he's considered a Democrat. I mean, he's run as independent before, but he's considered a Democrat, and you'll see that in like his criticism of certain Republicans, probably 45 included. No, he's a Democrat, but he's a rich, he's rich out the anus, which does affect his policy. One of the big criticisms is he was, giving it up to Wall Street and and all of his rich folks, and hurting the middle class and poor folks, so that his rich buddies could save an extra buck or two.
Mm, mm, I see. I see. I just remember liking some of the things that he had to say.
Yeah,
Not everything.
yeah, for sure. That's the general sentiment.
Wait a minute. The what?
The general sentiment.
Okay, so I'm not alone in that then. That there were other people who kind of liked some of the things that he had to say.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right.
Definitely. No, he was. Yeah, he was. He was liked until people kind of realized what was going on, and for people who don't realize what's going on, they probably still liked him. For people who don't have a problem with rich folks not paying their fair share and that kind of stuff, they probably still liked him. But generally, a lot of folks kind of started going against him, especially when stop and frisk became a big issue, and he was still doubling down on it. Um, yeah, it definitely hurt him. Definitely hurt him.
Oh, he doubled down on stop and frisk?
Yeah, yeah, he did the typical thing.
Oh, I thought
Typical
that
thing.
was a Giuliani thing.
No, people associate that with Giuliani. Giuliani had a lot of bad things too that were similar, but yeah, I mean Giuliani cracked down on people and the police were brutal under Giuliani, but stop and frisk proliferated under Bloomberg.
So Bloomberg really wasn't good for people that were marginalized or
No, not at all.
on
No.
foot, so to speak. And New
Yeah.
York City is a lot of foot traffic,
Hmm.
quite a bit of foot traffic in New York City.
Yeah.
I'm looking for, huh? So he served 6 years.
Bloomberg.
I don't know.
No,
What is the
no, because
mayoral term?
mayors.
Because it feels like
Yeah, no, the
Byron Brown's
mayoral
been
is
mayor in Buffalo forever.
no mayoral terms are 4 years.
Man, Byron Brown been the mayor since ever.
I feel like I remember. Maybe it's different in Buffalo.
He's been in the mayor a lot longer than 4 years.
Well, no, I mean he's probably got reelected.
Oh, they can just keep getting reelected like lifetime.
Well, you said a lot more than 4. Does that mean 8? Maybe he got reelected once.
Belen, how long has Byron Brown been mayor? More than 8 years, right? Yeah, more than 8 years.
Oh,
Almost,
well,
almost my daughter's entire life.
yeah.
My daughter's 25. Definitely longer than 8 years.
That is funny. That is funny because I was gonna say I feel like I remember that name when I was leaving Buffalo.
Yeah, Byron Brown was the mayor when you were here.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm saying, man. Like Byron Brown has been the mayor forever, bro. That's all I'm saying.
It's different in yeah, it's different in different municipalities. That's why like New Yorkers like we voted, like folks in New York City, we voted on 2-term limits. You're not going to
Oh,
hear me
okay.
for a second. I'm going on a range. Just hold on for a sec.